From action figures to board games, it's the greatest toys from the 1960s and 1970s with special guest Steve Gennarelli. This is the Outdated Entertainment Hour. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. My name is Bob Smith. You may know me from my years in journalism and magazines and newspapers. And we've got a special show for you today, toys. Let's go back in time to when we were all wearing short pants and had funny hair from decades ago. Our special guest is Steve Gennarelli. You know him from being a fellow podcaster of mine. He was on our last wonderful edition about the TV 100. And we're going to really get into our youth and talk about all the toys that we loved, and we bet a lot of you did too. We want to hear from you after this one. If there's any toys you think we left out inadvertently, we'll read them on the air in a future episode. So, hey, enough of my yakking. Let's get down with some really, really cool plastic toys, and we'll be back in just a couple of moments. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Joe Walsh. One thing I do when I'm not playing rock and roll is get on the air as an amateur radio operator. Also called ham radio, is a communication service provided by ordinary people just like you and me. Ham radio operators are everywhere, in your city, your area, your neighborhood, in any country you go to. We have a national emergency communication system in place 24/7, 365, in case of natural or man-made disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, you name it, we're there. Find out more about amateur radio at arrl.org/whatishamradio. See you on the air.
Steve, give me back my marbles, will you?
All right, here's
those are my marbles. You didn't. You would. I hit the marbles just right. Those are my marbles.
That's my lucky 8-ball. Give that back to me.
Oh, Steve, did you ever play marbles?
A little bit.
We used to play them in my grade school a lot. We played that and flipping baseball cards.
Yeah, everybody flipped their baseball cards.
Yeah, but marbles, you'd have to hit the other marble. You win the marble. It was just that's so. And I was so good at it, nobody wanted to play with me. Of course, nobody wanted to play with me for other reasons, but we won't get into that. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy to welcome back after he was just part of our historic, and I say historic because it's the best ratings we ever got, our historic TV 100. It's Steve Gennarelli, the fellow podcaster. You can hear on the Stick to Wrestling podcast with John McAdam on the Arcadian Vanguard Network. It's Steve Gennarelli. How are you, buddy?
Very good, Bob. Great to be back. And that was a good episode we did together on the old TV shows. And you have a new topic this week that you want to get onto that's called toys.
Well, I came up with this simply because toys are entertainment when you're young. When you were a little kid, TV was cool, but getting a new toy was overwhelming. The feeling when you're 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, of mom and dad said, "Here, this is for you," and especially if it's something you kind of wanted and kind of expressed that you wanted. Was there ever a feeling like that in your whole life, Steve? I mean, it was like, wow, I got this. You remember?
You know, the best example of that I can remember was actually surprisingly not Christmas time, but actually a birthday. I turned 7 years old, And one of the things I would do after school was I would watch reruns of Lost in Space. And this was 1971. So Lost in Space had been off the air for 4 years off of CBS. And somehow my aunt or my mom or somebody went to this place in Binghamton called Phil's Gift Shop. Now, Phil's Gift Shop was this fancy place where you could buy fine china and stuff. But upstairs on the second floor, they had a little area for toys. And I guess they found the last Lost in Space robot, the robot, and they wrapped it up for me, and I've got a picture of it somewhere in my photo album. But it's me with the robot, and I played with it for years on end, and it like you said, it warmed my heart. It as a 7-year-old, I felt completely fulfilled. I felt like. Oh my God, this robot is the only thing I ever wanted, and it was the greatest day of my life. But how about you? Did you have a day like that?
Well, I have a bunch of anecdotes from being really, really little. Don't ask me how I remember this stuff. I can't remember my birthday now. But when I was 4 or 5 years old, where did you get your hints for toys? TV, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And they had a product. It was a board game called the Happy Birthday game. I don't remember much about it. It just looked like fun. So I asked for that on my Christmas. I asked for 2 things, right? I didn't get it because my parents couldn't find it. And they came to me and they said, look, we asked Santa, we looked at every store, we couldn't find it. And I went, okay. So at 4 or 5, I didn't, I wasn't obviously spoiled or anything like that because I accepted it. And I think they made up for it because they got me a lot of other cool stuff. So that was fine. But I remember being 4 or 5 and not getting the present I wanted because it was unavailable. Nobody could find it. In fact, the people never even heard of it. Maybe it's something I saw months earlier than Christmas. They stopped making it or something. You know how that stuff works. But I remember it was called the Happy Birthday game.
That sounds great.
Now, your original question, though, was getting a certain gift that really knocked you out.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
The best gift I got for Christmas, I was older. I was a young teenager, 13, 14. I got a little stereo record player.
Oh, cool.
It wasn't a toy, right? But I remember that as being like the ultimate. Wow,
sure.
I'm up with the adults now. I can listen in full stereo sound. It was this. I remember the brand. It was Sound Design from James Way in upstate New York. It was this Chinese stereo, but you know what? It meant the world to me, and I still have most of the records I played on that thing. To me, that was like the passage of, wow, I got a real stereo. I'm not listening on this. We had these old 1960s record players where it was just the one-tone arm, and it was just. And we also had, when I was a little kid, the 1950s spindle 45 RPM players. You remember those? The big wide spindle. All it played was 45. It had no other alternative made by RCA. But when I got a real stereo, I was like, wow, I made the big time.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the one that hits me as being most like, wow, this is the greatest. You guys did great. I couldn't ask for a better gift type of thing.
Oh, that's really awesome. And, when you told me the topic of our discussion today would be toys, I started to do a little research and go back and look at some things on YouTube. And it seems that there's a lot of little things that were so fantastic. And they were so small and insignificant at the time, but they gave you so much fun and pleasure. Like, do you remember yo-yos? Like Duncan yo-yo.
I have that on my list, and yes, yo-yos were cool. And I was the worst yo-yo guy ever. I was
too. I couldn't do anything.
But I loved it. Every so often I was able to get one really going, and I'm like, look at me. And it felt good. The whiz off the finger, right? When that thing would whiz off your finger, the string would go like and then come back. Oh, Nirvana, it was great, right? I mean, that was so much fun.
And I mean, just the branding of it too. I mean, it had to be a Duncan yo-yo. Not that you could find any other yo-yos on the market, but they really made it seem so fancy and so like a status type thing.
But that was the power of advertising too. I think it has to be Duncan. They said or something.
Oh, it had to be.
I'll tell you another anecdote of a story. For some reason, when you were a kid, did you ever really, really want something? I don't know how old I was at this point. Gumby cartoons were on our local.
Sure.
And they came out with flexible figurines of Gumby and Pokey, like rubber.
I do remember
rubber Gumby.
Yeah.
And I remember the theme song, flexible Gumby, flexible Pokey. I went, oh God, I want this. And I kept dropping hints with my parents. No, you're not getting a Gumby. Then, damn it, they're driving me down Main Street, right, of my little town, and there's a toy store and a newsstand. and I could see a spinner rack inside the store with a Gumby sitting there. I went, "Oh God, it's right there!
There
It's
it
right
is.
there! Can we get that Gumby?" They said, "No, you can't get the Gumby." For some reason, it was almost like they didn't want me to have this thing. I
Right.
don't know why. So after a few months of caterwauling, right? Because the thing was 99 cents. I mean, my God, it was expensive, right?
Right, right.
For its day. I don't know how old I was, 5, 6, 7. They said, "All right, let's go get and we'll get your brother Dennis, we'll get him the Pokey. You guys can share it." And I went,
Mhm.
"All right." So the fun we had just going in that store and just picking them up. It was like the, the Red Ryder BB gun in the Christmas store. I finally got it. I finally
Oh,
achieved this.
what a relief, what a
So
relief.
here's the capper to the story. I go home. I'm in my room and I have a little desk and I have the Gumby and I'm gonna make him wave like he did. You remember Gumby always had one arm
Yeah,
up? And
yeah.
I took his left arm and I pushed it up and boing! The spring from inside the thing popped out of his arm. It was broken from the first time I ever touched the damn thing. And this Dennis, my brother, was playing with the pokey legs, and boing! Out came the spring. If you move the thing even a little bit hard, the rubber would wear away. I learned a valuable lesson that day. Things ain't what they seem.
Well, I would say that I think everybody had that experience of the like, one thing that they really, really wanted, then they get it home, and then it broke almost instantly. I mean,
Oh
I
God.
can't think of one, like, for me, but I know it did happen.
Now I listed Hot Wheels as one of my favorite toys.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the one with the loop, the little you just run it down the loop, it would loop and then end the
Yeah,
little race, and
yeah.
especially we could race someone else doing that, it was great. We had that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, no,
Probably
we had it too, like, from in our living room, like, it was from the entrance to our kitchen to, like, the front door of our house. We had those gold tracks, and you would me and my brother would put our cars in the little entryway, and then you would hit release, and then they would do their race, and then that way you would know who would win at the end, and we had Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars doing these
yeah,
races, and
yeah.
and looking back on it now, I wonder why we stopped doing it because it was a lot of fun, and it seemed like we were going to this is pre-malls. We were going to places like Kmart and Grandway. They had those things in stock every time you would show up, like kind of like baseball cards. There'd always be new Matchboxes to buy, always have
Mhm.
new Hot
Yeah,
Wheels.
yeah.
But we just kind of gave up and went on to something else, I guess. But it was fun while we did it.
Age changes your taste, but, I know girls that had Hot Wheels. I did. I mean, it was
Really,
so
really.
popular, yeah. And here's the one problem we had. Again, another kid disappointment. At the same store that we bought the Gumby, we bought a Hot Wheels track. And this
Huh?
was just a simple oval track with it had a machine in the middle that would push the car through so it would go around and around and around. I
Okay,
forget
cool.
I forget how it propelled it, but it did it. But the problem with the toy was this, for some reason, if you remember the orange track that looked like, Velveeta cheese or something like that, really
Yeah,
orange,
yeah, yeah.
it had a, like, tongue depressor that you would put one side in and slide it into the undercarriage of the
Right, right.
little lips and then into the other one, it would make the track. For some reason, we bought a set. Every time we went to put it together, the bottom part would fray and fall off.
Hmm.
Now, I don't know why that was. And we brought it back to the store and said, this isn't working. I don't have any more. So they gave us some money back, but we couldn't replace that track. That was a
Wow.
disappointment because we had bought another track from another store. And it wasn't like that. So it was just
Well,
poor QC, if to put it bluntly.
that was the end of your experience with Hot Wheels, and
No, 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 no,
and
no.
that's
We kept buying them. We had we had an array of toys, my brother and I, of cars. The cars were the best part of it. And we had this one white Camaro that just wouldn't work on the tracks. Like when you send them down the loop, it would just fall right off. It had a bent wheel or something. And it was hilarious because we would always do it just to watch it fall.
well, that's funny because like I remember there was a certain vehicle that I liked above all the rest, and it never won a race. It was always the worst, but it was my favorite. I don't know why it was, but I liked it.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know how old you are, but my list is very 60s and 70s centric because
Mine as well. Yeah,
that's
we're
what I
about the
grew up.
same age, really, honestly. So
Yeah. So if anybody's looking for reviews of the newer stuff, no, sorry, I can't help you.
this
No,
is outdated.
or no Pokemon is on this list. We'll put it that way.
No, no,
It's
hell
not
no.
going to happen. So I'm gonna segue now to the Kenner Corporation.
Okay.
which made all kinds of plastic stuff. By the way, most of the stuff was plastic, guys. It was they knew how to mold plastic, and one of my favorite toys ever, and I went through 3 or 4 of these. Now there were 2 projectors that they had. One was the Easy Show projector, which was the one I liked. That was the film projector with these little canisters, those little cartridges
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
film, and they were black and white. There was no sound, and you would plug them inside the projector, which was run by, I think, 6 freaking D batteries. I mean, took a lot of juice to run this thing, and a bulb in the front, and you would crank it and show real movies against the wall. And every year I got one, I was the happiest kid. I loved that toy, and it was cheap and junky. And I'll tell you why. The bulbs would burn out.
Okay.
And my father used to have to go to the hardware store to buy extra bulbs for this thing. You know, we could replace them, but they were hard to find. And he finally found them at a hardware store. He was always going to the hardware store to get bulbs. And I only had like 6 or 8 canisters of these movies, but I'd watch them again and again and again. I had one that had the Marvel superheroes, which you've heard me talk about before.
Oh, I love those too.
And I had another one with the funny comics like Huckleberry Hound and stuff like that.
Sure.
And I loved it so much that in later years, I graduated to a real 8mm projector. I forget the brand name, but I had a Three Stooges film. And again, they were black and white silent movies with subtitles. And I believe I had the 1969 World Championship Knicks 8mm highlight.
Oh, that's very cool.
That was really cool. So, yeah, I was a film junkie even as a little kid. And they also had another one called the Give a Show projector, which were the slides you would slide through. Like they were color, and they would just show them against the wall, same apparatus, except it was a slide, like a 5-panel comic strip that you would show against the wall. Man, did I love those toys. I mean, they were junk. I didn't care. I was I could watch anything I wanted anytime. Can you imagine that? You could watch whatever you want. This is pre-cable, pre-everything.
I know.
But in those days, to be a little kid and being able to look at whatever you wanted to look at, whatever you wanted to see, to me, it was nirvana.
Well, I had a similar story to what you have, and I think you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about. I had the old GAF Viewmasters.
Oh,
Viewmaster?
that is written right on the top of the same page I'm looking at with my notes. Oh, that was great.
Yeah, and you had for those that don't know, so like I was a Star Trek fan or Dark Shadows fan. I had you would buy them in little packets. They would have pictures from the show on the front, and they had each wheel would have like a number of pictures from the episode, and so basically you're looking in this Viewmaster, this little thing that you put your eyes into, and you'd see like a still photo from a classic episode of Star Trek or an old TV show. And they had them for movies, they had them for animated shows, but mainly popular TV shows. And it was cool because I know like Lost in Space, like where I was in upstate New York, they had stopped rerunning it around 73 or 74. And it wouldn't really run again on TV for another like, I don't know, dozen or 15 years. But I had my Viewmaster. I could always click those in and look at it, and it's almost like looking at an episode. Of course, it was just the one episode, but at least you could look at it like it was a TV episode.
No, those were great. And you know what? Educators loved the GAF Viewmaster. GAF Viewmaster. Henry Fonda used to do the ads for those. GAF Viewmaster.
First class.
And educators loved them because they also did series of educational ones with looks at animals, just, zoo animals, or they would have ones with scenes from other countries or historic figures in the United States and stuff like that. So they were more than just entertainment. They were also could be educational if you give your kid the right slides to look at.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I should say disc. They came on that rotating disc, like you said.
The disc, that's right. The only other thing I could think of that was similar to these that I had, I also had remember Light Bright?
Light Bright, yes.
You could have like, I mean, I know in the ad they would have like, you could make your own clown, you could make different things, but I know my brother is big into sports, so he could do like an auxiliary scoreboard and have the, Mets 4, Expos 3, that kind of a thing.
I do want to mention too that the GAF Viewmaster and the Light Bright are still made today.
I can't believe that.
Yes, it's true. It's true. I did a little research to find out which of these toys you can still go out and buy. And they're still affordable, and they're still out there. How do you like that? Isn't that great?
Now we were talking about kind of a more of a higher end toy. Now, getting back to something more simple and cheap, I mean, I can just remember how impressed I was. You get this thing that looked like an egg, but was plastic. You'd open it up, and inside was silly putty.
All
And
right.
silly putty you could play with, and then you could, if your newspaper had cartoons, you could slap it on the cartoon, and it would kind of like reprint the cartoon on your little silly putty thing, and then you could print it on paper if you wanted to.
You must be psychic, my friend, because right before we recorded this program, I did my last bit of research and I dubbed Silly Putty my favorite toy of all time because everybody could afford it. It
It
used to
was
be a
great.
quarter or 50 cents when we were kids, and it is still made today. I
Really?
just looked it up. Hold on. I think I have the notes. I got paper. I got paper notes, folks. Um, anyway, a larger company has taken over. I don't have it written down. They took over the making of Silly Putty. It is still available today. And you're right. Pick up the comic strips, especially the color comics on Sundays. Bounce it, stretch it. It wouldn't last long, but it didn't matter. You could go right to the store and get another, and they were so cheap. And
It was fun.
it was safe. I think they were non-toxic in case your little nephew decided to taste it or something like that. But I will say that I never had more fun with a toy. Bigger toys, smaller toys. Like you say, that sound of the egg cracking open and seeing that little ball there, and it was fun just to rub it between your hands, stretch it, and throw it around. And
Oh
those
yeah.
things would really bounce too, wouldn't they?
Oh, they really would. And you know, you mentioned earlier about you know, you and I were both big fans of the Marvel superheroes, and they had their little cartoon show. In this early '70s, this is before there were some action figures of the Marvel superheroes. I remember I was lucky enough to get like one little statue of the Hulk, and it was just you couldn't bend it or anything, but it was just him frozen in a pose. And you know, kids were creative back then, and I used my creativity. I would get like a big, tall plastic cup of water. I would put the Hulk in the full cup of water. I would put it in the freezer, and then he'd be frozen in ice. And then I would take it outside, and I would imagine the Hulk was trying to escape this block of ice. And so, you know, back then kids had fun with their imagination, is what I'm trying to
Yes.
say.
Yeah, it wasn't just, well, there it is. It looks like him. You would play with these things.
Oh,
Oh, by the
absolutely.
way, I found my Silly Putty notes. It is available today. Right now, you can get one as we speak for $2.79 on Amazon, and it's also sold at Staples. You can go to Staples store and get a Silly Putty.
Well, you know, my wife and I go on vacation once or twice a year, and we find a lot of these retro stores where they have a lot of retro candies, like old-fashioned candies. So, but it's not only they have candy, but they do have retro toys. So yeah, you might see these types of things out there available, and in just as they were all those years ago. But a lot of them have a lot of the old-fashioned toys and lunch boxes. So if anybody that's listening to this show would like to get their own silly putty, just be on the lookout. They probably have Dunkin' Yo-Yos too,
Mhm,
and you
mhm.
can look out and buy these as if they're brand new because they will be brand new.
And while you're doing that, I will give a plug to a store, the most unique store in Long Island called Bob Howard, Bobb Howard, a name. The first half of the place is an auto repair shop. The second part, there's a sign that says toys and old candy. And you walk in and there's a Slinky and there's all these other great 60s and 70s toys, and there's candies like you can hardly find, like Bonomo Turkish Taffy and
Oh yeah,
Smarties
sugar babies.
and Sugar Babies. Anything you remember from that era that they can get, they will sell. It is a wonderland for anybody who has a nostalgic bent like Steve and I do. And Steve, you would love this place. This place is just it.
Oh,
Bob
I love
Howard
it.
in the New Hyde Park, Mineola area of Long Island. I don't remember which town it is. I haven't stopped there in a few years, but it's still going strong. They still got the sign up, and you see families going in and out every weekend. It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. I'm sure
Yeah.
there are other places like that around, but that's the one I know of.
No, it's very cool, and people are just dying to get their hands on anything from the '70s, '80s, nostalgia, '60s. People love it. How about you and board games? Any board games
Okay.
that you can think of that you love to play?
Well, I'm like everybody else. Here we go. Here's my page on paper. Um, my board games. I played a lot of board games, and into my adult years, I love head-to-head competition, no matter what it is, and I love them. First of all, I remember Barrel of Monkeys. That's a game ostensibly.
I love Barrel of Monkeys. Yes.
Another affordable. All you had to do is put the monkeys by the tails together and string them up. That was so much fun. Monopoly, of course. Who didn't play Monopoly?
Oh, great game.
Operation.
Operation was very good.
Removed wrenched ankle. There was a classic commercial. I mean, it was just the best. Parcheesi and Domino's. And by the way, all this stuff that I just mentioned is still made today. Scrabble, of course. Battleship, I liked. Electronic Battleship, I loved.
Yeah, it was fun.
You hear the noise of the ship going down. Oh, come on, please. Awesome. Here's a simple game. Connect 4, I always enjoy it. In fact, at a dollar store, I recently bought a mini Chinese version of Connect 4.
Very good. Very nice.
I always enjoyed that game. Checkers, of course. Who didn't play checkers? I'm too stupid to play chess. I will fess that up right now. As an adult, Trivial Pursuit, of course, the greatest party game ever invented, really. And then they made awful a Ouija board, which isn't really a board game, but who didn't try a Ouija board, right? Oh, Uncle Phil, there were awful games in the 60s. Remember Bash? Awful.
I don't remember Bash.
I just remember you hit something with a mallet. It's just basically that was the game. And also Mousetrap would fall apart when you tried to put it together. It was
right,
just awful. Right. It was like this. It was kind of like the Foghorn Leghorn episode where the weasel put together a whole this whole contraption to hit him in the head with a bowling ball at the end. Poof. That's basically what Mousetrap was, but it never worked. It was slow and boring, and it wasn't much of a game. So, but I can tell you that virtually everything I just mentioned is still around today. And of course, there were the sports games. I had electric football, but I could never figure out how to use it. Did you ever have electric football?
My neighbor across the street had electric football, and that was the kind of a game that, like, when you see it in the store, you'd be saying, "My God, it looks so fantastic." But we go to my friend's house across the street, and it's just like, okay, these guys are just vibrating on a field. It's not like the guy is like grabbing the ball and running it. It simulated football, but it really was just a lot of smoke and mirrors.
But you know what though? I recently, in checking out this particular topic, I went on YouTube. Okay. You can play that thing. We were all doing it wrong. Check out the videos on YouTube of people who know how to play electric football, and you'll see the running back go up the field. I could never do that.
Well,
right? And you see the defense coming toward him. There is a way to play that like it's real football. It has to be learned because I could never figure it out. I'll tell you that much.
You're revealing something the world did not know until now, so this is good.
But I think there were different quality electric football games too. I think there were some cheesy ones, and probably the ones that work were the more expensive ones. I'm almost sure that's true.
Well, we're both big baseball guys, so this I have to say. Before we learned about Stratomatic, which I didn't really learn about that until I was at least 10. We used to have a game, and I bet you had this one too. It was called All-Star Baseball.
Catico All-Star.
You remember that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
My father would scream upstairs, "Stop whizzing up there! It's 10 o'clock." Because I would have you would spin a spinner, and it would land on a number. The number would be a hit or an out for the hitter. That was basically the whole game. And it was based on real major league.
The tricky thing was is that there was this dividing line between, say, a double and a ground out, and sometimes it would land on that little middle part, and you didn't know what happened. So
that's right. That's right.
But later on, we discovered Stratomatic, and to me, that changed my life. I mean, Stratomatic, especially the baseball game. I mean, I can remember, and again, this is going to sound embarrassing, but one of the greatest days of my life, it was like spring training. I think like 1980, 81, something like that. And I get this big package from Glen Head's, New York or somewhere. And
that's where it is, Glen Head. That's right.
This big manila folder. And I guess I was a big shot. Not only did I order all the cards, but I got the extra players too, the guys that had limited duty. And I felt like I won the lotto. I had every team and I would stay up late. I would play like West Coast games. I would have my own league, and it was fun. It was a great waste of time. And Stratomatic to this day is one of the best games out there.
Well, Steve, as you know, I have a connection with Stratomatic these days. And
Yeah.
I will say this, you would be shocked at the amount of adults across this country and international that play Stratomatic both as solitaire and in organized leagues and
Right.
online in our various electronic or their they have a game called Max now, which is you could subscribe to it, or they have Stratomatic for Windows, and they have the for football and basketball and hockey as well. You would be shocked at the amount of full-grown adults that continue to play it every day into their senior years. I still have a board. I remember teaching my brother how to play it about 2 years ago. There is nothing better than sitting across the table from someone else who knows baseball and playing
Right.
Stratomatic. That's the
Oh,
key. You have to have a kind of to be a good strat player, you kinda have to have a knowledge of not only the players, but baseball strategy. Do I bring the infield in? Do I set them back? Do I bring in a relief pitcher now? That's the fun. You're not a hitter in Stratomatic, you're the manager.
right, right.
And that's
Yeah.
different than every other sports game that was ever out there to the point when it was created. Hal Richmond, a very nice gentleman, is the owner, and I'm proud to be associated with it these days. I really am.
No, well, you should be, because that's one company that has brought so much joy to men and women all over the world, obviously.
Steve, you should see it every February at the Glen Head headquarters. They have an open house for the release of the new cards. People pre-order them, and they
Mhm.
come from all over the country to pick them up on our opening day.
I
We have
didn't know that.
They have a Hall of Fame where they announce members of the Stratomatic Hall of Fame, like different people associated with the company. And Keith Hernandez, who's a major player, was inducted into our Hall of Fame this past year. Just go on and on. The popularity is astounding, and it's still
It
a
should,
mom.
and
It's
it
still a
should
mom and
be.
pop company. It's still
Oh, that's
essentially a
great.
mom and pop company. So
That's great
yeah,
to hear.
it's a nice success story. Hal's a wonderful guy, and I don't know what else to say other than on an idle. I don't have as much free time since I started the podcast. Before the podcast, I used to play about once a week all by myself, and it's a great solitaire game. The baseball game is.
That's how I played it. I just played by
Yeah,
myself, and I loved it. And being that we segued into sports a little bit, eventually there's these things that came out called Atari, and eventually Nintendo,
right.
and well before there was a Madden football, we did have something called Tecmo Bowl. I don't know if you remember Tecmo Bowl, Bob.
It's funny. I was just watching that on YouTube.
Tecmo Bowl was incredible. They gave you a Super Bowl halftime show for the Super Bowl. They gave you you could see the credits at the end of the game when the Super Bowl was over with, and it was very, very cool. And before there was great games like NHL '94, there was Blades of Steel was one of those early hockey games, and that was a lot of fun. And one thing we got to mention, since we're talking about hockey, as a kid, did you have the Coleco turn hockey game with the you pull the cords, or the each player was kind of on a long the
Yes.
players were
Oh,
attached to
that's still a great game. Any of the
yeah
hockey board games, those are fabulous. That may be the best sports simulation one out there in terms of action.
well
Nothing but action, and they was always fun to play, no matter who you played. You needed 2 people, but that was the fun of it. Oh, yeah, those are great games. Absolutely
it
great
was
games.
fun. It was fun, and we found out the key to it was don't play with a puck, play with a marble, because then it would go really fast.
Wow, I never even thought of that.
That was a lot of fun.
We
Yeah.
always on the board that we had, we used it till it wore out. One of the players just wouldn't sit. One of the hockey guys wouldn't sit properly down, so he
Mhm.
would go to swing at the puck, and it was over the puck. He couldn't swing no matter how
All right.
he was bent somehow, and that was hilarious. We always had fun with that. But no, I never thought of the marble trick. That's awesome.
No, it was a lot of fun. Now I know, you and I are wrestling guys, and wrestling action figures got to be a big deal in the '80s. But back in the '70s, there were no wrestling figures, but there were GI Joes. GI Joes were a big, big deal back
Yes.
then.
Yep. Yeah, it
We
was
got
on
to
my list
mention
as
those.
well. But it's got to be the original 12-inch full-size GI Joe. Later
Yeah.
on in the run of that toy, they shrunk them. What's
Yeah.
the point of that? It has to be the foot long, and there were 4 original styles, but to me, the only one that was really GI Joe was the brown-haired guy with the scar. Right, right. There were 3 other. There was a blonde one and another one that looked different. To me, GI Joe was the brown-haired guy with the scar. Now I'm probably totally wrong about that. They're probably all really GI Joe, but they were available in 4 variations. You know what? Really good quality, the outfits and everything,
They were. They
and the
were.
tools and the helmet and the guns or whatever that came with them. But remember, they did pack a little fake gun in there in the early days. Yeah, that was fun. My brother loved those. My
The,
brother
the
loved
best
those.
one, the one that I had that I remember really well, I had the red-haired guy with the lifelike hair. They always made mention of lifelike hair, and he had a denim shirt on. And one thing I would always do with these dolls, whether it was these or the Star Trek Mego dolls, I always like to kind of like that Star Trek episode where they all get old. I would take baby powder and I would put it in their hair, and then I would age the dolls. So, it was always that was always an interesting factor there. I don't know how many
Yeah.
how many young ladies are listening to this program, but we have to throw them a bone. Some of their favorite toys may have been the Easy Bake Oven,
Yes.
obviously Barbie dolls, and for girls of a certain age, the beloved Mrs. Beasley doll, as featured on Family Affair, has to be mentioned.
I've heard multiple women beam with pride when they tell me, these are full-grown women my age, that said, "I never felt more pride than when I made my dad a cake, and he ate the
Really?
cake," and you know what I'm saying? That was the first cooking that many little girls ever did,
Wow.
and I think that's great. I think it's awesome. I think that's
No,
of
that's cool.
course, now, if on that same vein, my friend,
Yes.
creepy crawlers, probably the most dangerous Mattel toy ever made. You would literally bake these metal molds. It was lit up by a light bulb inside, but it was hotter than hell.
It
But
was, yeah.
there were tongs where you'd have to take the mold out and put it in a little vat of water. It would then you could pull the thing out and you had a bee or a wasp or a dinosaur or whatever the set was. It
Right.
was fun, and we did have one, and we managed not to set the house on fire. It was great. It was in fact, we liked it so much, I think the next year we got the follow-up product, Incredible Edibles, which is essentially the same thing, only you could eat them.
Really?
Yeah, there were root beer butterflies and a snake that made it chocolate flavored. It was edible creepy crawlers. I'll tell you what, they did ban them after a while. They
Did they really?
somebody I read this online. They did determine that the toy was too dangerous. They took it off the market for a while, but they did bring it back. And yes, it's still available today. You can still get creepy crawlers, folks.
Wow.
How do you like
That
that?
that's a scary idea,
But
but
you know what? No. They've improved the safety of it. Obviously, it's
good.
not as hot. But I will say this: how cool were those bugs? How much fun was it to go to your mother's bed and put a whole handful of wasps or something in there, and she pulls down the covers and screams bloody murder? That was my idea of fun.
I can never do that to my beloved mother. I can never could do that. But one thing that we need to talk about is some of the stuff that you could enjoy outside, like more outside type toys. And Wham-O was way ahead of the curve.
I have a whole
They
page.
came up
Yes, yes,
they
yes.
came up with a frisbee. You can't beat a frisbee.
Oh, by the way, I didn't want to mention that word. When I was a newspaper guy, I'm not making this up. When I was a newspaper guy, I used the word frisbee in a news story. The kids were throwing frisbees in a field or something. I get a certified letter from Wham-O.
Oh my God.
I don't know how they found me in upstate New York in the pre-internet days, but they said, you should be aware that the word Wham-O is a registered trademark, or the word frisbee is a registered trademark of the Wham-O Corporation for a singular flying disc. I went, you got to be kidding. So from that point on, I used the phrase flying disc instead of frisbee whenever I referred to one because I was afraid of legal action. I'm not
Oh
kidding.
my goodness.
So
My
you've
goodness.
mentioned, okay, but we will mention everybody that frisbee is a registered trademark of the Wham-O company, which has changed hands several times since that time. And don't sue us. We love your product. Okay, we love frisbees. They're
We love
awesome.
them all.
Yes, we do. Oh gosh, the Super Bowl, Wham-O.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was so powerful. I mean, you could slam it against the ground and it would just go up like 20 feet in the air. It was remarkably impressive.
And you ever hit one with a baseball bat?
No, no, no.
Oh gosh. Oh, you'll never see it again. It was about the size of a handball, if I recall, right?
About yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was smaller than a baseball, but bigger than a golf ball. We'll put it that way. But they were
Well,
fun. They were a lot of fun. Go out on the
another
sidewalk and just bounce it.
well, another outdoor toy that changed my life was the wiffle ball, the classic wiffle ball, and
Mhm.
we just played hours on end from noon till sundown. We played wiffle ball constantly, and because you and I both grew up on the East Coast, I mean, there was no better toy during a certain time of the year than the old flexible flyer sleigh or those old flying saucers you just to sit on and go down a hill,
Mhm.
and enjoy the snow.
Yeah, those were great. We never had the real ones. We would always just take a cardboard box and pull it apart and go down the hill. I didn't think my parents
That'll work.
buy that stuff, but no, you know what though? They bought my sister a literal sleigh made of wood
Really?
with metal, and I do remember using that sleigh going down a hill. That had to be how dangerous is that? But we did it.
Uh,
You know, we didn't have any fear back then. I wouldn't do it as an adult, but we did it back then.
Oh, it was a lot of fun back in those days. I mean, but and now for adults like us, it's like getting in cold weather is just so annoying. But as a
We don't even
kid,
wanna go
you loved it.
outside. Are you kidding? Yeah, I'll tell you. Can we
Oh,
go back to Wham-O for just a second? 'Cause I did
please,
some research on Wham-O. Did you know that in 1957, I think they registered the hula hoop for the first
really,
time and sold them
really.
from 1958 on. And who can forget the slip and slide, which, by the
Uh,
way, later became how do I put this? An adult toy, but we won't talk about that. There's, the Wham-O air blaster, which would just poof, would just set out this big puff of boom! You would just I don't even know what that was, but that was the Wham-O air blaster. That was amazing. Silly string,
yeah, very popular.
also with adults, that was a great party favor. And of course, the certified flying disc that we talked about. So I just want to give Wham-O a shout out. Another plastic toy company. How much fun was their stuff? I mean, and
Oh
they continue to make Wham-O toys to this day, which I think is awesome.
no, that's good. That makes me feel young, right? Hearing that, but and I guess we need to also pay homage to the Nerf football, which we've all messed with at some point or
Oh
another.
yeah, Nerf stuff was awesome. You could play it anywhere. That was the best part about it.
Oh
My,
yeah, a
my
lot of fun.
My brother and I had a Nerf basketball hoop and Nerf ball basketball, and we put it up in the cellar of our house, and we could play
Mhm.
basketball. I don't know we just ran toward the hoop and threw it, but it was fun. We would play for hours, just the hoop and
Oh.
the ball. I mean, you couldn't hurt anything. You could dunk it. It was fun. It was just great, safe fun.
Well, I'm looking at my list, and it looks like I've told you pretty much almost everything that's on my list, with one major exception. To me, this would be the ultimate toy. Like the one that I would probably enjoy even playing with today because it was so astounding for its time. This is back to the mid '70s when Evil Knievel was all the rage. The Evil Knievel stunt cycle. So you had the action figure of Evil Knievel on a motorcycle. You put him on this thing that you would crank and rev him up on the motorcycle, and then he would take off. And if you built a ramp, he would go up the ramp and fly into the air. And I mean, I don't think they ever put out a Snake River Canyon jump with him flying in the rocket. But if that's out there, I would be interested in getting that now even.
Yeah, I remember seeing that advertised. Now that you mention it, I never had one, but I remember seeing that advertised. That's a great memory right there.
Those were a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Now, sometimes you would find toys at the dollar store, the cheapo store, their neighborhood, candy store, and they would
Sure.
be 75 cents, 50 cents, and they would still be fun.
Oh yeah.
How much fun did you have with a whoopee cushion? I mean, come on now. Especially your mother has no idea, or your dad's about to sit down in the easy chair, you put it underneath the cushion. Come on, it's the best. And how about bop bags? You remember those? It was a bag that you would inflate with your mouth, and it was made of rubber, and it would be, I don't know, a clown or Batman or something. You could hit it, and it would bounce back.
I don't remember that.
Oh, yeah, my brother and I were quite violent as children. We enjoyed that immensely. I remember having
Well,
a Batman one, yeah. Now, I was not a fan of the Trouble board game. Remember Trouble?
Trouble, yeah.
But I loved the Pop-O-Matic. Remember there would
Pop 'em-
it would you'd put your finger on it, it was like a little dome, and the dice would be in, and you would hit it,
Yes.
and the dice would roll around, and then you get
Yeah.
your count from that. I thought
It's
that was cool.
kind of like a craps game for kids.
Yeah, I am surprised more companies didn't emulate that. That is a tremendous invention. Etch-a-Sketch, you ever play with an Etch-a-Sketch?
Oh, all the time. That's classic.
Yeah,
Yes.
Ohio Arts, and I'll have you know they still make those, and I recently bought one. You saw it on Facebook. I did a little I did a skyscraper in New York, which was simply just 3 lines and a line on the top of it. And people were writing on Facebook going, "That's beautiful." No, it's not. I did it in 3 seconds. I put it up as a joke, say, "Look at my artistic ability." People went, "Yeah, that's gorgeous." I went, "No, it's not."
Well, I know one of the toys that you loved and you couldn't believe that you got it was the Mattel electronic football, the handheld football game.
I never had one of those.
You never had that?
No, I missed out on that one.
They were okay.
I think it was a full-grown adult by the time they came out, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, but I just don't
Yeah,
remember
maybe
all
you're
of
in
them.
college. You're in college, maybe.
Maybe. You remember Color Forms?
I do remember color forms. Yeah.
Which was basically put the clothes on the person or different outfits, or you could put a hat on a baseball player or all that stuff. And it for some reason, it was a blast. And I got to give whoever made them credit. They lasted. They didn't wear out. They would stick every time you put it on the figurine, and it was great. We really enjoyed those.
Did you ever have Rock'em Sock'em Robot?
I was about to get into that. No,
I
no.
didn't either.
I always wanted it. It was one of the great commercials. The 2 kids, you're just with the thumbs, and they're operating the guy, and they're punching each other, and then you knock the guy's block off. Boosh! It always looked great. For some reason, we never got one. I don't think we ever asked for one. I don't know why. But
No,
even as a full-grown adult, I see it in the store, and I go, should I try this?
I don't think it would really do it for you at this point. But going back to again, you're a real small kid. You're just trying to figure out how all this works. Lincoln Logs were great. You can mess around with Lincoln Logs and
You're
build
right. You're right.
build a fort, build a house. Whatever. It was awesome.
I was always really bad at that, but my brother was fantastic at that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have trouble setting a foundation for a log cabin. He would have a whole city of Lincoln Log stuff up before I even had got my box open. So yes. Now, you know what? I was pretty blessed as a kid because I went through for all these toys and I owned them all, or somebody bought them for me. So I did pretty good as a kid. Remember SD's model rockets?
I do. I think we may have gotten one at one point. It definitely did not lift off. But
Really? Oh no!
yours
Listen,
did?
we had a model rocket club at school. It
Really?
was after school. I remember Mr. Post, thank you, Mr. Post out there, took us all outside and we would light the thing and we put them together. I could only afford the cheapest white, uncolored Estes model rocket. It was like 50 cents, I remember. But I got it and we set it up and bang, it went up about a half a mile in the air. I went, I don't believe what I'm seeing. It was awesome. It was a great feeling. To know that it would actually take off. Yeah. But Mr. Post really knew what he was doing with the Estes Club.
Right.
And it was a blast. And that's all it was. The kids with more income would come with the really fancy big ones, and they had colors, and they could put decals on them and, put a sports insignia on it if I felt like it. And could you use them again and again? Because if you set them up right, they come down a little parachute.
Right.
Right. And that was probably the last toys I ever bought. I was of that age because you're about 12 or 13 when you're playing with those, I would think, or at least I was. And that was it. I don't remember playing with any more toys after the Estes tragedy.
Right. Yeah, I think you and I as we got to be teenagers, maybe still play a game of Trivial Pursuit, something like that. But
as an adult, I played a lot of Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah, other than that, all this other wonderful stuff we're talking about just became sweet memories of the past.
Right. Well, there's more for me. How about regular model kits?
They
You
were
could build a
great.
car, you could build superheroes or action figures or famous people. And I had the companies written down. I think Aurora was one of them that made the model kits. Or
Yeah.
Estes, I'm trying to figure. I can't quite figure it out.
I think wasn't there AMT, something like that? I think they did the Starship Enterprise, and
Right. Yeah. You could
I was so lazy as a kid. My brother was 3 years older. I would buy the thing and I'd give it to him and I'd just say, "Can you make it for me?" That kind of thing. I would give him the sniffing glue.
Those were great. We'll go back to toys for really little kids that are still made to this day. I don't know if Mattel makes them, but they used to make a toy called the See and Say that was really educational. It was like a plastic, I don't know what to call it. It was a plastic toy with a string at the bottom of it. And there was an arrow, and you would point the arrow at a cow. and you would pull the string, and the cow goes, and you'd hear moo, or they'd point it at a rabbit. The rabbit eats carrot. They had there's a farmyard one. There was a cars and buses one. There was other sounds, and I thought it was an awesome toy to give to a toddler just to learn about the world. And they still make them to this day, and educators love them. So
yeah, yeah.
I don't recall having one. I recall a nephew or something of mine getting one, and I was hooked on it. I just sat there playing with it over and over. And I was a full-grown adult, so it's like shows you where I'm at, right? But I think that the See and Say is a classic toy.
Oh yeah. I can't think of any on the list or any that we've mentioned that I would say were bad. I mean, they all had their positives, and some of them really transcended because they were sold to generations of kids. They never really got old. And and I will say this too. In the research I did for this, I'm sure you caught on to this as well. One thing that was so unique about the time that we grew up in, in that era of merchandising, one of the things that was so normal and commonplace, which is just so foreign to today's audience, back in those days with Sears and J.C. Penney, they would send out these phone book size, of course, no phone books
Right.
anymore, but phone book size catalogs of items, household items, and they'd either have a huge toy section in them, or around Christmas time, and they would say, "This is your Christmas catalog of toys, and you can go ahead and pick whatever you want and tell your parents this is what you need." And it was so cool to revisit those when doing this research. As kids, we would go through those catalogs and we'd see things that were so goofy and dumb, like they'd have like cuckoo clocks, and you think, my God, if our house had a cuckoo clock, that would be so great. But I mean, thankfully, we had some restraint, and our parents had some restraint, and we didn't buy everything we ever wanted. So.
My parents were way better to me than I give them credit for. I remember every Christmas, yes, those catalogs. We had a local Montgomery Ward store that used to send. It was a department store, and they used to
Sure.
send us the catalogs. And my mom would say, "Go through the catalog. Tell me what you like in here." She was being coy about it, and I would put, "I like this, I like that," and they would use that as their guideline when Christmas came around, which was very sweet of them. And I'm going to get choked up if I keep thinking about it. It's nice stuff. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
catalogs were a great way for kids to tell their parents what they wanted without telling them what they wanted. Mom, you ever see one of these? And they'll know. They'll know what these are. It's like the Red Ryder BB gun. You have to drop little subtle hints before they'll pick up on it, right? By the way, the model kits we were talking about, Aurora and Revell were the big brands when I was a kid.
Awesome.
Also, let's not give short shrift to a couple more things here. Mattel for little kids had a toy, and I know I had one. My wife had one. Comics characters or cartoon characters that were a puppet, but they had a string on it and they would talk.
Okay.
Like you would, Bugs Bunny would say, "What's up, Doc?" Or Tom and Jerry would say, "Hey, are you squeaking to me?" Right? And they were really, really popular. They advertised those, obviously, and they had a Popeye and all that other stuff.
Oh yeah.
Safe, fun toys that lasted forever. I look on eBay and they are still selling those toys, the original ones, because they still work.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that great?
I remember another thing that like little kids really liked. Do you remember the big wheels? You'd sit on a big wheel and
Big wheel,
go
yeah,
down
yeah.
hill. I remember. I can remember. I used to spend the weekend sometimes with my grandparents and my aunt, and I remember watching Hogan's Heroes and seeing like Army tank, and like the next day going to like Kmart or whatever and getting like a tank that you would sit in and drive it. And I mean, those days, the marketing and the things you could buy just so quickly and easily, it was just magnificent. Every kid was so happy back then.
It was. You make a great point there. But you know what? There's also the corner store toys we all love, like Army Men.
Oh yeah,
A
yeah.
giant
We had
bag of
tons of them.
like 500 for 39 cents. You'd go home and set up. Now, again, these are war toys, but also cap guns.
Oh yeah,
Bang!
yeah.
They would
That
make the
definitely.
real loud noise. Now, if I was a parent, I wouldn't give either thing to my kid. But I'll tell you what, in my era when thought processes were different, those were it. We'd love to play with those things.
I had a shiny gun, a metallic gun that looked like a real pistol. It really did. Then I had one that looked more corny, kind of like a Lone Ranger type pistol. And but yeah, it was a different time for sure. It wasn't. What, today's a more thoughtful world that we live in, I would say.
Well, that stuff they let us play when we were kids. Oh, God.
Yeah,
Remember the lawn darts tragedies?
you're right. Yeah,
You know, there was some really unsafe toys out there that lasted for a while until it was too
yeah.
late, and that's a terrible thing, so
I remember when Dan Aykroyd on Saturday Night Live was selling bag of glass to
bag of
kids.
wipers, bag of glass, right? Irwin Mainway, I think his name was, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah,
A bag
great
of glass.
catches. That was great stuff. Oh, no, it's educational, teaches the kids light refraction and stuff like that, yeah. Oh, man. Great classic SNL, but Steve, I wanna thank you for being about I also wanna thank mom and dad who have both passed on. As I just sat down with a piece of paper and a pencil and just wrote down my memories, I realized how much stuff you bought me and my brother and my sister, and thanks, guys. I mean, you really made us happy. Sometimes that 45 minutes you spend playing with a new toy, you were the happiest creature on earth. Am I right, Steve?
Oh yeah, I'm in the same boat you are, Bob. All my people that bought me these things, they're all gone, not one left. But we both have our wives, and we live a good life, no complaints. But it is fun to look back on what made us tick as kids, what made us happy as kids, and we'll always have the memories.
Yeah, anything that takes the edge off life, even as a child, is the best, you know? And I remember being 4 or 5 I do remember being 4 to 6, 7 years old and thinking the world was so big and wide and bright, and, I had a good view of the future, and my future turned out to be pretty doggone good, so, thanks again to my folks for, giving me a cap gun I could shoot my brother with. I really appreciate it.
And thank you, Bob Smith, for having me on your podcast again. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm hoping that people who listen to it think it's fun too. And I want you folks out there, it's outdatedent@gmail.com. Did we miss something? I'll bet we did. So write to us, and on a future editions of the show, I will read them on the air. Toys that we should have listed, but then I'll bet there's some major stuff we missed. I don't think there's much, but there must be some.
There's one that I will mention that just because it's such a good game, and it was actually a kind of a game that would help kids garner an appreciation for artwork. There used to be a Parker Brothers game called Masterpiece, and basically in the Masterpiece game, they would have all these small photos of classic pieces of art from great artists from all over the world. And the idea of the game was you would try to memorize who the artist was, and then you maybe buy their painting or what have you. And I remember the time playing it. I mean, I knew who all these great artists were just because I had done well at the game, and that would be a great way to get somebody into art or to appreciate art. And I hope that game is still being made by Parker Brothers.
Yeah, I bet it is. I
I
didn't look
hope
that up,
so.
but I'll have to look for that. And one other thing I want to tell our audience, folks, it's a weird world out there right now. We know there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of stresses. Play, will you? Play a little bit. I have an Etch a Sketch next to my bed, a little mini Etch a Sketch that I play with. I still play Stratomatic. I have a wimpy figurine with Eugene the Jeep and about 40 hamburgers, right? I mean, I still have a handful of toys that I just look at and it makes me feel better. Don't forget to do that. Steve, do you have anything left that you would consider a toy at this point?
I actually have a wrestling game that I play. I have an old PS2, PlayStation 2, and I play this game called Legends of Wrestling 3. And I've made about 400 extra wrestlers that weren't included in the original game. From very obscure people like Frankie Williams to really well-known names like Kurt Angle. I made them all, and so I revisit that once in a while, and it's just fun to kind of stimulate your creativity.
Do you have any baseball cards?
My brother has them, has the ones like when we would buy them as kids together, I would just let him have them. And I think he sold most of them, but he has tons of sports memorabilia at his house in Chicago. And I visit him once in a while to look at those things.
Oh, that's great. I have a few full sets of baseball cards from the 80s, but that's it. I stopped collecting them. Speaking of that, have you gone into a store and checked out the price of a pack of baseball cards now?
No, I haven't.
I walked in my local, I'd say five and dime. Let's see how old I am. I call it a five and dime. Shut up out there. But I go into this little convenience store thing. It's not a variety store. That's what they call them. A little of everything store. And behind the counter, I see packs of this year's baseball cards. I go, I'm going to buy a pack, see how they are. Because, a friend of mine went on to work for, after the wrestling magazine days, a friend of mine went to work for Topps. So I want to see what they're doing these days.
Mhm.
I pick up the set of cards. And I'm going to buy it. I put it on the counter. Just a kind of a thick set of cards. He goes, $4.99.
Holy.
I went, what? And that's how much they are now. Like a comic book is $3.50, $4 now. I mean, everything has gotten expensive in this world of ours. I think I should know better. Anything that's printed is expensive now. I didn't expect it to be that much. I thought it'd be maybe $2 or $3.
Oh, I have to admit, because you and I are both wrestling guys, I have noticed that in recent years, Topps or Panini or whoever puts them out are doing more retro WWF cards or WWE cards. And a little part of me would be like, I wouldn't mind getting a whole set of those just so I had them. But what's the point at this point? What am I going to do with them? So they're
Well,
kind of like that.
this is at my age now, I'm going around the apartment, contemplating what I'm going to do with my life and what's left of it. And I go around and look around and go, isn't it time to liquidate some of this stuff? Would someone else like this? Should I give this to some friends or some friends' kids? Or, you reach a point where am I ever going to use this particular item again?
Right.
And I think that's smart. But I will say this, and I'll reiterate what I said before. Don't forget to play, guys. Anybody listening out there, don't forget to play. Play with something. Play with your kids. Play with a toy, even if it's meant for children. It'll do you some good. I promise.
Yeah.
That and stare at the wall 10 minutes a day. I'm serious. Staring at the wall without any electronic buzz around your head is the healthiest thing you can do. We all get all this sensory input every day, 24 hours a day, it seems. Take a few minutes to stare at the ceiling, stare at the wall, listen to silence. It's healthy.
For our mental health, we have to do something because the world we're living in has gotten pretty insane lately. So we have to do what we can.
Here in New York, I can just take a drive, and by the time I get home, my hair is like all curly because I've been frightened like 15 times in a 2-mile drive. It's crazy what goes on out there. But you know what? At least I can podcast. I'm on the radio, the modern version of it, with great people like Steve Gennarelli. Steve, tell them how to get a hold of you and what podcast you're on and anything else you want to tell people.
Well, I'm on the Stick to Wrestling podcast with John McAdam, part of the Arcadian Vanguard Network. We have a new show every Friday, and I'm a big fan of Bob's show, too, by the way, the Outdated Wrestling Hour, which is phenomenal. So please listen to both of our shows if you get a chance, if you're into wrestling. And I'm in Tampa, Florida, and hopefully we won't get hit with another storm, but it looks like we have one on the way.
Oh, good luck with that, man. Seriously, good luck.
Thank you.
And I say this constantly, and I don't want to say anything's the best. I've learned that from somebody mentioned it to me. I won't say anything's the best, but I will say that there's nothing better than. There is no nostalgia wrestling podcast better than Stick to Wrestling with John McAdam. It is the best researched, most fun, guys who really know what they're talking about. Between John and Steve, they're like two walking encyclopedias, and I give my wholeheartiest, is that a word? Recommendation to Stick to Wrestling. It's easy to find. Type it in on your browser. It comes right up. Bing, and listen. It's always a blast. And they're great guys. They're awesome guys. I love both of you guys. You're the best, man.
Well, thanks, Bob. Just thanks for even thinking about me to have me on, and hopefully we'll do another one someday on a different topic.
Yes, please come back whenever you feel like it. And you can always pitch topics to me. And by the way, this is the guy. This is Mr. 100. He came up with the concept for all the 100 shows, the 100 wrestlers of the 70s and 80s, and the recent TV series show we did. Mr. 100, Steve Gennarelli. Here's your new nickname, man, Mr. 100.
I'll take it, and thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
No sweat. Folks, Steve Gennarelli. Well, there you have it. Make sure I'm going to roll some dice and buy some marbles and, I don't know, look at a GAF Viewmaster. We loved our kid times, didn't we? And I hope you did too. So that ends this one. Let's do our usual commercial announcements. Outdatedent, E-N-T, at gmail.com. You can write to us there. Our website is outdatedentertainmenthour.buzzsprout.com. You'll find all of our episodes there. Another easy way to find us is just type in Outdated Entertainment Hour in any browser and we'll pop right up on a variety of top podcast apps. You can find us everywhere. On our website, you can hear every one of our shows without using an app at all. So seek us out if you could, if you've enjoyed this show and other shows in the past. That's about it for now. We're going to bid you a pleasant goodbye. And I feel like breaking out the old Stratomatic and playing a solo game right now. So while I'm about to play the 1964 New York Mets versus the Chicago Cubs, my name is Bob Smith. I hope you really enjoyed this edition of the Outdated Entertainment Hour, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. We come out every alternate Wednesday. Look for us, won't you? Thanks a lot. And like Ringo Starr always says, peace and love, brothers and sisters.